Is Superman the movie a timeless classic or a poorly aged relic? I used to watch this quite a bit as a kid, but something caused me to fall off the entire series right around the time I became a teenager. A part of this was definitely because as a high schooler, it was not as cool to say I liked Superman when I could be saying I was watching Arnold Schwarzenegger blow crap up. But a part of me also thought, maybe this movie wasn't actually that good. Is that the case? Well, that's up to me to figure out. I'm going to analyze 3 of Superman the movie's strengths and 3 of its weaknesses. This is the good and the bad in Richard Donner's Superman. And I guess I'll spoil things right off the bat. I like this movie way more now than I did as a kid. And a big part of that is strength number 1, how sincere it is. Superman the movie wears its heart on its sleeve. Yes, it can get cheesy at times, it can get melodramatic, but it all stems from it being an incredibly earnest movie, which is a big part of its charm. Starting this movie off on Krypton with all the characters speaking very poetically and theatrically kicks Superman off with this epic sense of mythological flair laced with tragedy.
It's your conclusions we find unsupportable.
This planet will explode within 30 days.
Yes, nowadays we've all seen plenty of movies where some world gets destroyed, but back in 1978, I don't know how common it was. And with Krypton's totally unprecedented fate set, Superman's parents deciding what to do with their only son carries such emotional weight.
He'll be fast, virtually invulnerable.
Alone.
He will never be alone.
But once Superman arrives in Kansas, his mother's fears are realized, because as Clark Kent, he has to hide who he really is, pretend he's something he's not. This portion of the movie is sped through in the matter of a couple of minutes, but there's so much poignancy when Clark confesses his frustrations to his foster dad.
Every time I get the football, I can make a touchdown.
Yes, I'm sure.
Every time.
And there's one thing I do know, son, and that is you are here for a reason.
The little time we spend with the Kents is pure gold. It's Superman at its most sincere. But of course this ends in tragedy. And I gotta say, Jonathan Kent's death is one of the most nuanced and subtly played and brilliant death scenes I've seen in any movie. I think it's that little regretful smile on Jonathan's face that destroys me, and that translates into the devastation we feel for Clark. And couple that with the banger scene where Clark says goodbye to Martha.
Why did you say that name?
And Superman the movie packs an emotional punch. This movie feels like a myth come to life, which is captured in Jeffrey Unsworth's dreamlike cinematography. It's why Lois Lane reciting a literal poem in her head doesn't bother me that much. It feels tonally in sync with that earnestness.
You can fly. Belong in the sky, quivering like a little girl, shivering.
Okay, it does get a bit cringeworthy, that I have to admit, but this is all part of this movie's earnestness. It's why it was such a hit. It can be frustrating with how meta and self-referential today's movies can seem. Like they would toss a poem in just so they could then knowingly wink at the screen. But Superman the movie is above that, it just wants some fancy rhymes. And in the meantime, maybe you wouldn't mind subscribing to my channel, but only if you have the time. I've sold my soul. But by now, it's clear that I've been burying the lead. Christopher Reeve is strength number 2 in Superman the movie.
Why did you say that name?
This is one of his first roles ever, and while I don't think he shows that much range, I also don't think anyone else could have embodied that pure sense of good and decency that Christopher Reeve just exudes. That calmness, that pleasant tone of voice, that gentle giant vibe, it's purely Superman.
Easy, miss. I've got you.
You've got me. Who's got you?
That smile sells the character. Superman is not a dark and troubled individual like Zack Snyder tried really hard to make him.
Why did you say that name?
No, he's an alien with godlike powers, but all he wants is for humans to be safe and to treat each other well. That's all he wants. He's so wholesome. And Christopher Reeve sells all of it. And that's all before I get to his physical appearance. The chiseled jawline, the towering height, those freaking blue eyes. I'm a married man who's not interested in men, but man, if I fell out of a helicopter and got caught by this Superman, I would swoon.
What the hell is that?
Ah!
Easy, miss. I've got you.
Oh, he called me miss. Now would I swoon in Clark Kent's arms?
What the hell is that?
Ah!
Easy, miss.
What are you doing?
Got you.
Lois?
Why did you say that name?
And that's the magic of this performance. Reeve is basically playing two entirely different characters in two vastly different manners.
Any more at home like you?
Not really, no.
As Clark, it's all bumbling, nervous energy, goofy humor, and awkwardness that I think so many people can relate to.
Clark Kent. Yeah, hi, see you around.
When he's not Superman, he's a complete doofus here, but it's endearing. And while I do wish the movie delved more into how pretending to be incompetent in front of the woman he loves on a daily basis feels for him, there is that great moment after Superman and Lois' date where Christopher Reeve effortlessly shifts between roles and we briefly see Superman's unbreakable facade start to crack.
Lois, there's something I have to tell you. I was first really nervous about tonight.
There's that earnestness again. It's so powerful in this movie. Superman is a lot of things, including a full-blown romance, and Christopher Reeve is fantastic in these scenes. And you know who plays perfectly off of Christopher Reeve? Margot Kidder. I never liked Lois Lane as a kid. I didn't think much of Margot Kidder's performance, and she certainly gets worse over the course of the 4 movies.
Doing his best to make sure that it'll be all right for the rest of us.
Well, after rewatching Superman now, Margot Kidder rocks. Her tenacity, her charisma, her vulnerability, it's all great. But my 2 favorite parts of her character, how quietly frustrated and bewildered she seems with Clark's bumbling antics.
Sorry.
Clark! You fainted.
Sorry.
And then there's her interview of Superman.
What color underwear am I wearing?
There are a lot of movies where dirty jokes just went over my head when I was a kid. I didn't expect it so much from this movie though. Lois is so horny, and so is Superman. His response isn't like, oh, sorry ma'am, can't talk about that. No, he really intently tries to look through her dress, but he's blocked by that dastardly planter made out of lead. Like, this scene is way more sexual than I remembered.
The rest of your bodily functions are normal?
Sorry, beg your pardon?
This is why this movie's sincerity isn't overkill. Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder had such great chemistry during this awkward flirting, and there's just so much to appreciate, including the one moment where Superman kind of dismisses Lois, but in a very Superman way.
I need a sweater. It must be kind of cold.
No, you're warm enough.
Even though this foreshadows just how much Superman is going to be gaslighting Lois over the course of the next 3 movies, I think this scene is magical even if it goes on a bit too long. But the scene does go a bit too long, and that's a common problem you see across this entire movie. Weakness number 1 is the pacing is all jacked up in Superman the movie. Like, I appreciate how this film feels like an epic with 3 sections, Krypton, Kansas, and Metropolis, but opening things up with Jor-El condemning Zod and his cronies to the Phantom Zone is a strange decision, considering they aren't seen again until Superman 2. Then Kal-El's parents saying goodbye to him is given a lot of emotional weight, but the flowery dialogue from Marlon Brando feels overwrought when you realize just how much of it there is. As touching as it is to bequeath all that he owns and all that he is to his son, and for his son to see his life through his eyes, or the father to become the son and the son the father, eventually it becomes clear that Jor-El just likes to hear Jor-El speak. Now, this stuff is fine when in isolation. It helps to build up the mythology of Superman, but when Clark builds his Fortress of Solitude and asks Jor-El about who he actually is, rather than give us an in-depth answer about what his existence means, we have to settle for learning Superman's name, and then a 2.5-minute sequence hurtling past stars as Marlon Brando just gives him some cliff notes on all sorts of random topics.
In this next year, we shall examine the human heart. This year, we shall examine the various concepts of immortality.
Jor-El is a terrible teacher. Like, what kind of a syllabus is this? A full year on the human heart? There's like an aorta and ventricles. I think there's left and right ones of both of those. It pumps blood. You need it to live. There, I finished that lesson in like 10 seconds. And then an entire year on immortality? What is Jor-El rambling about? This scene is just a drag. It goes on too long. And even though things get exciting for the next several scenes as we see Christopher Reeve for the first time, the pacing keeps sputtering, because now in the last hour of the movie, we get introduced to Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor, and this is where weakness number 1 merges into weakness number 2, Lex Luthor himself.
How do you choose to congratulate the greatest criminal mind of our time?
Well, I just did by making you a weakness in Superman the movie. Now, don't get me wrong, I think Gene Hackman is actually great in this movie. It's just what the movie decides to do with him that is lackluster. Whereas everything else feels like a grand myth being presented to the audience, Lex's plan feels like a low-level Bond villain. And I do enjoy the comic hijinks between Lex, Miss Tessmacher, and Otis, but then we have an entire scene where this trio rearms missiles, and rather than be played for tension or drama, it's just bumbling screwball comedy. Otis messes up, Lex gets mad, they try something different, and now Miss Tessmacher fixes it. There are no stakes to this scene. I'd rather have had this alternative plan have showcased Lex's intelligence, because that's something that the movie doesn't highlight. He just keeps calling himself the greatest criminal mastermind ever, but he never actually shows that to anyone.
That's kryptonite, Superman. Little souvenir from the old hometown.
My issue with this is how Lex figures this out. He just reads a book, then says that a meteorite from Superman's home planet would be toxic to Superman, but just saying that doesn't make it so, and it doesn't make it convincing or any less of an ass pull. And just as Lex's plan feels like it came out of nowhere, it ends up failing because of pretty much nothing. Like, Superman is not able to get out of this until Miss Tessmacher realizes her mother is in the path of one of Lex's missiles. And then she does all the dirty work, just like when she solved Otis and Lex's problem earlier. It's a pure plot contrivance. And that feeds into my third weakness. The narrative is grand in scope, but the plotting and themes are a little haphazard. The finale with the earthquake is a visceral thrill. The effects are a bit dated, but it's epic seeing Superman doing so many super things, and it ends in utter tragedy as the one thing he's not able to do is save Lois. Now, I'm sure a lot of you expected one of my weaknesses to be Superman reversing time, and full disclosure, I expected that to be one of its weaknesses, but I give it a pass because it's an emotional tour de force from Christopher Reeve. But even with those emotions, how much of a pass can I give it? It completely robs the finale of any sort of stakes because Superman can just undo those stakes. And logically, it is very stupid. It's a power that Superman pulls out of his ass. And the thing that's always baffled me is, say you can rewind time, wouldn't time just then start going forward again once he stops spinning the earth? Like, this time without Superman there to save anyone? Like, I don't know how it doesn't just play out like this when Superman gets back to Lois's car.
Hi.
And what makes this ending worse is the movie's handling of Superman's motivations.
It is forbidden for you to interfere in human business.
One thing I do know, son, and that is you are here for a reason.
Both of these elements were important in building Superman into this mythological character that was clearly the aim of the movie, but only for its first half. Once in Metropolis, the story becomes very simple, and while it's charming and has my favorite moments of the movie, it's not very complex. The story is extremely straightforward. Superman has to deal with almost zero internal conflict during this section, so for the ending to try to play up the situation as a moral dilemma between his opposing views, it falls flat because we haven't thought about those themes in over an hour. Like, I don't feel like Superman the movie connects its three major arcs very well, particularly for the character of Superman. Thankfully, through it all, Richard Donner's direction holds it all together, which is strength number 3. Donner has done a wide array of movies both before and after Superman, and his handle on those different genres is a real asset to Superman the movie. I may not like how disconnected the story feels, but I love how different the major locations feel. Even though we barely see Krypton, you can almost feel the weight of its history and regal and arrogant society, both in the intro and within the walls of the Fortress of Solitude. Then the sections in Kansas really capture that sense of isolation that Clark is feeling, with some incredibly striking imagery. And then out of nowhere, he's able to evoke this sense of big city hustle and bustle, particularly in the Daily Planet. Like, there's so much energy in these scenes, which makes it easy to not notice how seamless this extended one-shot is, or this audacious sequence where we follow Clark from outside of the Daily Planet until he gets to a window and jumps out. It feels like a comic book come to life. And then there's the best scene in the movie, the helicopter rescue. My memory of this series is that all the scenes where Superman has to rescue someone are all a little bit silly, a little bit goofy, like they don't have legitimate stakes. Well, my memory is shit because the helicopter scene is a tour de force of suspense. It's in the slow burn of the setup. It's in putting Lois in grave danger. It's in only bringing Clark into the sequence halfway through and then giving us maybe the ultimate superhero transformation in any film. This is a masterclass of a scene. The emotional roller coaster is perfectly executed, and I love the little directorial touches, like Lois making fun of Clark for fainting earlier, but then fainting at the tail end of the helicopter scene, or how Lois being buried alive at the end feels like a terrifying reflection of this scene, right down to some of the camera angles. And I can't finish a video on Superman without talking about the effects. The tagline of this movie was, "You'll believe a man can fly," and yes, the effects are dated. It doesn't look nearly as slick as CGI nowadays, but there's not a single moment in this movie where I don't actually buy into the idea that this is Superman flying around. It feels perfectly in sync with how this movie is directed, with how this story is being told, with how epic the scope is, with it going all in on sincerity, with Christopher Reeve's peerless portrayal of Superman, and with Richard Donner's complete devotion and respect for the source material. The answer to my initial question is yes, Superman is a timeless classic. I've got to reintroduce it into my regular rotation, and I need to get my daughter to watch these movies. She just walked in at the end of this video.
I watched Superman.
Yeah, you did. No, you watched Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut.